Jessica Sanchez has been one of America's most beloved young stars, but now the time has come for her to reveal something she's kept hidden for years. What is Jessica Sanchez's secret, and why is she finally opening up? Jessica Sanchez, the powerhouse vocalist who captured America's heart on American Idol back in 2012, has been a household name ever since. Known for her incredible vocal range, soulful performances, and undeniable stage presence, Jessica has always appeared to have it all together. But what if there's more to her story than we've seen? What if the talented, passionate artist we've all come to admire has been hiding something personal that she can no longer keep to herself? In today's video, we're diving deep into the secret that Jessica Sanchez can no longer keep hidden. Before we get into the secret itself, let's take a moment to remember how Jessica made her mark. Jessica Sanchez, a voice so pure it could silence angels, the prodigy who captured America's heart at just 16 years old. From the moment she stepped onto the American Idol stage, she commanded attention with a talent that seemed heaven-sent, earning the admiration of millions and the respect of music legends. With her breathtaking vocal range and emotional depth that defied her youth, she became the symbol of a generation's dreams, finishing as runner-up in 2011 and signing with Interscope Records before most teenagers even graduate high school. Music industry veterans called her a once-in-a-generation talent. Producers lined up to work with her. For a brief, shining moment, she was unstoppable. The girl who had everything: youth, talent, fame, and a future that glittered with infinite promise. But behind that radiant smile lies a story not of triumph, but of devastating heartbreak, a hidden battlefield of crushing rejection, industry betrayal, shattered dreams, and a loneliness so profound that even her extraordinary gift could not protect her from it. The world celebrated her voice for years, applauding her technical mastery and emotional delivery, but few are prepared to face the haunting truth she now carries, wrestling with shadows so heavy that even her undeniable talent cannot lift them. Her journey is not one of dramatic scandal or self-destruction, but something far more insidious. The slow, agonizing fade of a star that burned too bright, too young, in an industry that had no intention of catching her when she fell. Before we begin, if her voice ever moved you to tears or gave you hope during those magical Idol nights, leave a like as a tribute to a woman who sacrificed everything to share her gift with the world. Behind the applause and standing ovations lies a cruel truth. Jessica Sanchez's first stage was not built on confidence, but on the fragile foundation of a childhood marked by divorce, displacement, and the desperate need to be seen. Born on August 4th, 1995, in Chula Vista, California, to a Filipino mother and a Mexican-American father, Jessica grew up in a home that shimmered with cultural richness from the outside, filled with the vibrant traditions of two heritages, yet was fractured by wounds no one could fully heal. Her parents' marriage crumbled when she was young, splitting her world in two, forcing her to navigate the complicated terrain of divided holidays, separate homes, and the constant shuffle between two lives that never quite felt whole. Her mother, Edita, a former singer herself, worked tirelessly to provide, juggling multiple jobs to keep food on the table and Jessica in vocal lessons. But the absence of her father left a hole that music would try to fill, a void that no amount of applause could ever completely satisfy. Jessica would later confess with painful honesty, "I sang because I needed someone to hear me, even when my own family was falling apart. Every note was a cry for attention, for love, for someone to notice that I existed." That hunger for validation, small as it might sound to others, became a lifelong drive, a shadow that followed her into every audition, every stage, every silent night when the crowds went home and she was left alone with the echo of her own voice. School offered little comfort or escape. While other children played carelessly on playgrounds, forming friendships and making memories, Jessica rehearsed endlessly, her childhood stolen by the weight of expectation before she even understood what childhood was supposed to be. At talent shows and local competitions throughout San Diego County, she wasn't just the talented girl with the big voice. She was the girl carrying her mother's dreams, her family's hopes, the promise of a better life that would justify all the sacrifice. Each performance was not just about singing, it was about proving she was enough, that she was worthy of the investment, that she could be the success story that made sense of all the struggle. Her peers were carefree, Jessica was burdened. Birthday parties were skipped for vocal lessons with expensive coaches. Sleepovers traded for recording sessions in budget studios. Weekend trips to the beach became weekend trips to auditions in Los Angeles. Hours in the car each way for 30 seconds in front of bored casting directors. The loneliness carved deep, creating chasms in her heart that success would later fail to bridge. She was present in classrooms but unseen by kids her own age, celebrated on stage but isolated in the hallways, the weird girl who sang instead of gossiped, who practiced instead of partied. By her early teens, the pressure had already begun to harden her, teaching her that love was conditional, that worth was measured in applause, and that stopping meant disappearing entirely from the only world that had ever noticed her. At 11 years old, barely out of elementary school, she auditioned for the first season of America's Got Talent, a child among adults, hoping to be noticed by the millions watching. She made it through several rounds, her voice stunning the judges and audiences alike. This tiny girl producing sounds that seemed impossible from such a small body. But she was eliminated before the finals, sent home with kind words and empty promises that she had a bright future ahead. The rejection stung deeply, more than she let her mother see, more than she admitted to herself, but it also ignited something fierce within her, a determination bordering on obsession. The girl who had been told she wasn't ready refused to accept that verdict as final. She returned home not defeated, but determined to prove every person who dismissed her wrong. For the next 5 years, she trained relentlessly, refining her craft with a discipline that bordered on self-punishment, starving herself of normalcy in pursuit of perfection. While her friends at Bonita Vista High School navigated first loves and Friday night football games, Jessica was in studios, perfecting runs, studying Whitney Houston and Mariah Carey recordings until her voice could bend in ways that defied her age. She watched their performances thousands of times, analyzing every breath, every inflection, every moment of emotional connection. The cost was steep and compounding. She had no real childhood, no genuine friendships untainted by competition or envy. No rest from the relentless pursuit, just the constant gnawing hunger to prove she belonged on the stages she dreamed about, to silence the voices that said she wasn't ready, wasn't good enough, wasn't meant for this. Her teenage years were consumed entirely by preparation. While classmates worried about prom dresses and college applications, Jessica worried about vocal nodes and song arrangements. She practiced until her throat was raw, until her mother begged her to rest. She worked with every vocal coach they could afford, draining the family's limited resources in pursuit of a dream that felt both inevitable and impossibly distant. Every rejection from smaller competitions and auditions became fuel. Every dismissive comment from industry professionals became ammunition. She was building not just a voice, but armor, preparing herself for the battle she knew was coming. Humiliated by her early elimination, yet unbroken, Jessica returned to the national stage in 2012, auditioning for American Idol's 11th season in San Diego. This time, she was not a child hoping to be noticed. She was a 16-year-old girl with the voice of a seasoned diva and the scars of years spent chasing validation through every possible avenue. From her very first audition, performing the powerhouse ballad that had launched Jennifer Hudson's career, she left the judges speechless. Jennifer Lopez, sitting in the judge's chair, wept openly, her hands covering her face as Jessica's voice filled the room. Steven Tyler stood up, unable to contain his excitement, calling her a star before she even finished. Randy Jackson, the veteran of 11 seasons, declared her one of the best vocalists the show had ever seen in its entire run, comparing her to legends who had come before. Week after week, as the competition intensified and contestants fell away, Jessica delivered performances that transcended competition, showcasing emotional depth that seemed impossible for someone so young, someone who had barely begun living. Her rendition of the Whitney Houston classic left not a dry eye in the studio audience. Her tribute performance brought grown men to tears. When she sang the Luther Vandross masterpiece, even the hardened crew members stopped working to watch. Each song was not just sung, but lived, as if she was pouring every ounce of pain and longing accumulated over 16 years into the notes, transforming her childhood wounds into art that moved millions. America fell in love instantly and completely. Her voice became the soundtrack of hope for millions of viewers each week. Fan pages exploded across social media platforms. Online forums buzzed with predictions that she would win it all, that her victory was inevitable. Even music legends took notice of this teenager from California. Stevie Wonder personally requested to duet with her on the show, an honor reserved for the truly extraordinary, an acknowledgement from one of music's greatest voices that he recognized something special in hers. For a girl who had spent her life feeling unseen, invisible in her own classroom, the spotlight was intoxicating, validating, everything she had ever craved since those early days of singing for anyone who would listen. But as the competition progressed toward its climax, cracks began to appear in what seemed like a certain victory. During the top 7 week, after a performance that the judges praised as flawless, Jessica landed in the bottom 3 based on viewer votes. The shock was visible on her face, the confusion and hurt barely concealed behind a practiced smile. The judges, for the first time in Idol history, used their one save of the season to rescue her, a testament to her undeniable talent and their belief that she deserved to continue. Yet the message was devastatingly clear. Talent alone was not enough in this competition. Likeability, relatability, the intangible connection with voters mattered just as much, if not more, than technical ability. And in that department, despite her gift, Jessica was struggling to connect with Middle America in the way that winners needed to. The finale arrived on a wave of tension and expectation, and Jessica stood on that massive stage opposite Philip Phillips, a humble, relatable guy with a guitar and an easygoing charm that America had embraced wholeheartedly. She had the superior voice. Everyone knew it. Critics agreed unanimously. The judges agreed without reservation. Industry professionals watching agreed. But when the votes were tallied, when Ryan Seacrest prepared to announce the winner to millions watching, America chose Philip. Jessica Sanchez, the most technically gifted vocalist of the season, perhaps of multiple seasons, finished second. The devastation was immediate and absolute. As confetti fell and cameras captured Philip's genuine shock and joy, Jessica stood in the background smiling through tears, clapping politely, dying inside with every passing second. She would later admit in interviews, her voice still carrying the weight of that night. That moment taught me that being the best isn't always enough. Sometimes the world just wants someone else, someone more comfortable, someone who doesn't remind them of how hard you have to work for greatness. It was a wound that would never fully heal. The first cruel lesson in an industry that would continue to betray her again and again, each time taking a larger piece of her spirit. After Idol, the offers came quickly, a flood of opportunity that seemed to validate everything she had sacrificed. Interscope Records, one of the industry's most powerful labels, signed her to a major deal worth reportedly over $1 million. Top producers lined up, wanting to work with the girl whose voice had captivated a nation. Collaborations with established artists were promised. Magazine covers were discussed. At 17, barely old enough to vote, Jessica Sanchez seemed poised to become the next great pop star. The success story that would justify American Idol's existence and prove that talent could still triumph in the modern music landscape. Her debut single was released in 2012 with significant fanfare and a featured verse from an established R&B artist. It was sleek, radio-ready, produced within an inch of its life, everything a hit should be according to the industry playbook. Except it wasn't a hit. The song barely cracked the charts, peaking far below expectations. Radio stations gave it token plays during overnight hours, but refused to add it to regular rotation. The momentum from Idol, which had seemed so powerful just months before, evaporated almost instantly, like morning fog under harsh sunlight. Music critics praised her vocals effusively but questioned the material. noting that the production buried her most distinctive qualities under generic beats and uninspired lyrics. Fans waited for something that felt authentic, something that matched the raw emotion she had shown on Idol, the vulnerability that had made them fall in love with her voice. Her debut album, released in 2013 after months of delays and label indecision, told the same tragic story on a larger scale. Despite featuring collaborations with top-tier producers who had crafted hits for major artists and guest appearances from respected names in R&B, the album sold fewer than 20,000 copies in its first week, a commercial disaster by any standard. It was a devastating number, far below what the label had projected, far below what Jessica's talent deserved. Radio refused to support it beyond obligatory promotional commitments. Streaming playlists ignored it. Music television wouldn't play the videos. The girl who had once been called the future of music by industry veterans was now struggling to be heard at all, her voice lost in the noise of an oversaturated market that had already moved on to the next shiny thing. Interscope, seeing the numbers and calculating the return on investment, began to pull back their support with brutal efficiency. Promotional budgets that had been promised were suddenly slashed. Tour support that would have put her in front of audiences disappeared entirely. Marketing campaigns were quietly cancelled. The label that had promised her the world, that had convinced her to sign away her rights and trust their vision, was quietly distancing themselves from their investment. Jessica, barely out of her teens and completely unprepared for this kind of betrayal, was learning the harshest truth of the music industry. Talent is disposable. Hype is temporary. Numbers are everything, and once the machine stops believing in you, once the executives decide you're not worth the effort, survival becomes a lonely, uphill battle that most artists lose. Behind closed doors, away from cameras and journalists, the pressure was crushing Jessica under its weight. She poured everything into trying to make the album work, desperate to prove that the label's faith hadn't been misplaced. Late-night studio sessions stretched until dawn as she recorded additional tracks, hoping one might break through. Endless interviews that led nowhere, morning shows and podcasts and radio stations where hosts mispronounced her name and asked the same shallow questions. Performances at small venues that felt like humiliating steps backward after filling stadiums during the Idol tour, singing to half-empty rooms where people talked through her songs. She watched helplessly as other contestants from her season, even those who had finished lower in the competition, found more success and stability. The winner's debut single became inescapable. Another contestant built a solid career in a specific genre. Meanwhile, Jessica's name was fading from public consciousness, her voice drowned out by an industry that had already moved on to manufacturing the next manufactured star. The rejection felt deeply personal, a confirmation of every childhood fear that had driven her to this point. She wasn't enough. She had never been enough. All the practice, all the sacrifice, all the years of giving up normal teenage experiences had led to this, standing in the wreckage of dreams that had seemed so solid just months before. The girl who had once made Jennifer Lopez cry could now barely get people to pay attention. The voice that Stevie Wonder had wanted to sing with was now relegated to background noise. The psychological toll was immense, chipping away at her sense of self-worth until she barely recognized the person looking back at her in the mirror. By 2015, just 3 years after that magical Idol run, Interscope dropped her from the label entirely. No public announcement, no final single to mark the end, no acknowledgement of the partnership, just a quiet dissolution of the contract, paperwork signed by lawyers, as if she had never mattered, as if those millions of dollars and hundreds of hours in the studio had never existed. For a girl who had sacrificed her entire childhood, who had stood on the biggest stages and moved millions with her voice, who had bet everything on this dream. The silence was deafening. She was 20 years old, unemployed in the only field she had ever trained for, unsure of who she was outside of the dream she had been chasing since she was 11 years old. The industry that had celebrated her gift, that had told her she was special, now acted as if she didn't exist. Desperate to stay relevant, to prove she still had value, Jessica tried everything within her power. She moved to the Philippines in 2015, hoping her Filipino heritage and name recognition from Idol would open doors that had slammed shut in America. She released music there, working with local producers on songs that would appeal to Filipino audiences. She appeared on variety shows and talk shows, always smiling, always gracious, never letting the hosts or audiences see the pain underneath. She performed at festivals and corporate events. There was some success, actual chart performance, and genuine fan support, but it felt hollow. Like chasing scraps when she had once been promised the feast, like being famous in a smaller pond because the ocean had rejected her. She became a judge on a Filipino singing competition show, a strange and painful reversal of fortune, now sitting in the chair that had once launched her own dreams. But even there, in a role that should have felt like validation, comparisons haunted her constantly. Why was she judging instead of performing on world stages? Why was her own career stalled while she coached others toward dreams she couldn't achieve herself? Every talented contestant was a reminder of what she had lost. Every success story that emerged from the show, a painful echo of what hers should have been. She smiled and gave feedback and encouraged their dreams while her own lay in pieces. Back in the United States, she tried reinventing herself multiple times, each attempt more desperate than the last. She released independent singles, songs that showcased her vocal prowess and artistic growth, but lacked the promotional machine necessary to reach mass audiences in the streaming age. She performed at small clubs in Los Angeles, at private events for companies, at casino lounges in regional markets, anywhere that would book her and pay enough to justify the trip. The girl who once had Stevie Wonder requesting duets was now singing at corporate parties and local venues, invisible again in a world obsessed with the spotlight, a ghost haunting the edges of an industry that had no use for her anymore. The emotional toll was devastating and compounding. Jessica struggled with anxiety and depression, the weight of unmet expectations crushing her spirit day by day. She gained weight, something the cruel and anonymous voices of social media were quick to weaponize against her. Comments flooded her posts whenever she dared to share anything. Vicious and unrelenting attacks calling her washed up, irrelevant, a has-been before she ever truly was. Strangers who had never met her felt entitled to judge her appearance, her choices, her worth. The girl who had once been celebrated for her voice was now reduced to cruel jokes about her body. She retreated from social media multiple times, deleting apps from her phone, unable to bear the constant attacks that chipped away at her remaining self-esteem. Relationships suffered under the strain. Romantic connections crumbled under the pressure of her career, struggles and emotional instability. Friends from her Idol days, her idol, moved on with their lives, building careers and families, their interactions with Jessica becoming increasingly rare and awkward. She was stuck, frozen in the wreckage of what should have been, while everyone else evolved and progressed. Her mother, ever supportive and believing, tried to encourage her, but even that unconditional love felt heavy, weighted with the knowledge that she had sacrificed so much of her own life, and Jessica had delivered so little in return. The guilt was suffocating. The loneliness was absolute, a constant companion in hotel rooms and empty apartments, whispering the same verdict she had carried since childhood. You are not enough. You will never be enough. By her late 20s, after years of fighting and failing, Jessica made a painful but necessary decision. She stepped back from music, almost entirely retreating from the public eye to focus on healing and figuring out who she was beyond the singer. She rarely posted on social media. Performances became sporadic and selective. The girl who had once been destined for superstardom was now just another cautionary tale, a reminder that talent alone cannot guarantee success, that the industry chews up even its brightest stars and spits them out without apology or regret. Now, at 31 years old, Jessica Sanchez exists in a strange and painful limbo between past glory and present obscurity. She occasionally performs, her voice still as stunning as ever when she chooses to use it, but the stages are smaller, the audience is thinner, the applause more polite than passionate. She has spoken in recent interviews about finding peace with her journey, about redefining what success means, about learning that her worth is not measured in album sales or chart positions or Instagram followers. Yet beneath those carefully chosen words lies the unmistakable ache of dreams unfulfilled, the ghost of the future she was promised but never received. She tried launching a YouTube channel, sharing covers and personal content, hoping to rebuild connection with the fans who once loved her. The views are modest, sometimes reaching the thousands, but never the millions. The comments are kind but sparse, often from the same small group of dedicated supporters. The girl who once had millions watching her every move on national television now struggles to reach thousands on a platform where anyone can be a star. She posts less frequently now, the gap between uploads growing longer as the reality of her diminished reach becomes harder to ignore. Her legacy is heartbreaking, not because she failed completely, but because she succeeded at everything except what mattered most in the modern music industry: commercial viability and sustained public interest. She had the voice, undeniably one of the best of her generation. She had the work ethic, the discipline, the dedication. She had the passion and the dream and the willingness to sacrifice, but she lacked the perfect timing, the right team, making the right decisions, the intangible magic that turns raw talent into cultural phenomenon. And so she remains a ghost of what could have been, a reminder that the cruelest fate is not to fail completely in spectacular fashion, but to come so achingly close to everything you ever wanted. To touch it briefly and then watch it slip through your fingers while the world moves on without noticing your pain. Jessica's story whispers a universal truth that the industry doesn't want you to hear. Talent is not enough, never has been, never will be. Dreams do not guarantee outcomes no matter how pure your intentions. Hard work does not ensure success despite what motivational speakers claim. And sometimes the most devastating tragedies are not the dramatic falls from grace, not the scandals or addictions or public meltdowns, but the slow, quiet fading of a light that once burned so bright it seemed impossible to extinguish. She is not a cautionary tale of recklessness or self-destruction or bad decisions. She is the tragedy of a system that elevates and then abandons, that celebrates and then forgets, that demands perfection but offers no safety net when you inevitably stumble under the weight of impossible expectations. And now, dear viewer, her story turns to you with an uncomfortable question. What lesson will you take from Jessica's journey into the darkness? To pursue your dreams but protect your heart from the inevitable betrayals. To measure success by personal fulfillment rather than external validation and fame. To remember that worth is not determined by the world's applause or silence. Jessica Sanchez is not a perfect story with a neat resolution. She stumbled, struggled, and continues to search for her place in a world that has largely forgotten her. But perhaps that is precisely what makes her journey worth reflecting on. It reminds us that the greatest courage is not in conquering the world, but in surviving its indifference, in waking up each day when the dream has died, and finding reasons to keep breathing. Share your thoughts below. Subscribe for more untold stories of stars who burn too bright, and join us in honoring not just the successful legends, but the fragile, resilient humanity inside those who gave everything and received so little in return. For in every shattered dream, in every quiet struggle, in every moment of private pain, Jessica Sanchez shows us the ultimate truth, that the greatest tragedy is not failure, but being forgotten after giving everything you had, after sacrificing your childhood, and your peace and your sense of self for a dream that the industry never intended to let you keep.